You are responsible for day-to-day operations of the Department of Justice, and in particular, the criminal justice aspects of the Department of Justice. Is all of that correct?
That's correct.
It is unfortunate, Ms. Monaco, that as you look back over the last 2.5 years, this Department of Justice, I believe, has been the most partisan Department of Justice we've ever seen. And that is directly contrary to the mission of DOJ. DOJ is meant to be nonpartisan. It is meant to enforce the law, regardless of party. I had hopes that Merrick Garland would actually do that when he was confirmed. Those hopes have been shattered. You have been a loyal deputy standing alongside that partisan corruption of Department of Justice. You have been willing to devote massive resources to targeting individuals that are perceived to be political opponents of the White House. And you have been willing to devote zero resources to protecting individuals who are perceived to be political opponents of the White House. I want to ask you about a statute you've been asked about already, 18 U.S.C. 1507. You're familiar with this statute?
Yes.
It's a criminal statute that says whoever with the intent of influencing any judge pickets or parades in or near a building or residences occupied or used by such judge shall be fined or imprisoned under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. Now, the entire country has seen hundreds of protesters outside the homes of Supreme Court justices night after night after night. You turn on your TV and you see violations of this criminal statute over and over and over again. How many prosecutions has DOJ brought under 18 U.S.C. Section 1507 under your leadership?
There have been no prosecutions under 1507. We're pursuing an attempted murder case against an individual who
Zero is
threatened
the answer.
Justice Kavanaugh.
I'm quite aware, and you're responsible for that, allowing these protests night after night after night. The violent threat of homicide of the individual who traveled across the country attempting to murder a Supreme Court justice, that was fueled by DOJ refusing to enforce this statute. Now, it's not an accident that DOJ refused to enforce this statute. The U.S. Marshals gave a presentation. The General Counsel's Office of the U.S. Marshals, if you look at one of the pages from that presentation, the General Counsel's Office stated the goals of the Residential and Personal Protection Mission: keep SCOTUS justices and their family free from physical harm, do not interfere with lawful First Amendment protected activity, avoid, unless absolutely necessary, criminal enforcement actions involving the protesters, particularly on public space, and making arrests and initiating prosecutions is not the goal of the Marshal's presence at SCOTUS residences. Are you familiar with this presentation?
I am. I'm familiar with the fact that the U.S. Marshal Service Director has been explicit, has been clear that the Attorney General has repeatedly directed him to enforce all federal laws, including 1507, and that his #1 priority, and that of his many deputies assigned to a 24/7 security presence, is to protect the life, the safety, the property of the justices and
Did you or
their
anyone
family.
from the DAG's office meet with the U.S. Marshal Service and discuss Section 1507?
I regularly meet with the Director of the Marshal Service, the
And
Attorney
have you
General.
discussed 1507?
I discussed the Attorney General has been quite clear, and I have been quite clear with the Director of the Marshal Service. The
Are
Attorney
you familiar with
General's-
this presentation?
I've seen those slides, if they're the ones that Senator Britt presented to the Attorney General. But I want to be quite clear, Senator, about the direction given to the Marshal Service through the Director of the Marshal Service. He has been clear that the Attorney General directed him repeatedly to enforce all federal laws, to
With
make
respect,
his
Ms. Monaco,
#1 priority.
that is demonstrably false, because this is written instruction. Making arrests and initiating prosecution is not the goal. That's not an instruction to enforce the law. That is exactly the opposite. It is 180 degrees. It is instructing them. It is not the goal to arrest anybody, despite the fact that the criminal statute said they shall be imprisoned. You made a political decision, Merrick Garland made a political decision, that because you agree with the protesters, you don't like the decision the Supreme Court justices made, the marshals were instructed, don't arrest anyone and don't enforce federal law. Isn't that correct?
That is not correct, because the Attorney General and I and the Marshal Service Director are so concerned about potential threats to the justices. The Attorney General directed in an unprecedented step, 24/7.
Not what this says in writing.
24/7.
What does this say in writing?
I don't have the right glasses on for that, but Senator, the Attorney General was very clear with the Director of the Marshal Service, and the Marshal Service Director has said the same thing.
The word
that
not is even underlined.
The number one priority given to the Marshal Service for their unprecedented protection detail for the Supreme Court justices is to protect their life, their
But
safety,
to
and
ignore
their property.
1507.
To protect their life, their
To
safety.
ignore federal criminal law.
Respectfully disagree with that characterization.
That's what the written instruction says. Not is underlined. Do not make arrests. Do not initiate prosecutions. Up is not down.
The Director of the Marshal Service has been very clear. The Attorney General directed him to enforce all federal laws, but that his number one priority is to ensure the safety
Ms. Monica,
and the
what you're
protection.
saying is objectively false.